Hi guys, welcome back to ModCons. We are with a very special guest today. It is Peter Cardwell.
Hello.
Author, a journalist, Politico. You see his face everywhere, all over all the news channels, so you've definitely seen him, and he is in the know. He has the knowledge. He has been a special advisor. He has studied journalism at Oxford and got a scholarship in Columbia in New York.
That's right, yeah.
How amazing is that? And so you've been in the game a really long time. And
make me feel old.
Yeah, no, you started young. And I just want to start with, how did you get from journalism into politics? Were you always going into that sort of?
Well, I've been a journalist for 10 years and worked as a producer and a reporter. And the job I had at the time was a reporter for Good Morning Britain. Okay. So I was being a bit drowned out by Piers Morgan at that stage. I'm joking. He was a great colleague, and actually is a colleague now. So we've ended up in the same place together, so I can't escape him. But no, it was great. I had a brilliant career in journalism. I loved it for 10 years. But part of my job when I worked at Newsnight was to get to know some of the special advisors, and one of them became the chief of staff at Theresa May's Downing Street. And I just thought, gosh, I'll drop her a line and see if she might be interested in me working for them. I'd always tried to be completely impartial when it came to my journalism, but my conservatism was something that I sort of, had my light under a bushel.
Yeah.
But I spoke to a woman called Fiona Hill, and she put me in touch with James Brokenshire, who at that stage was the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. And I kind of went on from there. And, 3.5 years, 4 departments, 4 ministers. It was a great time, and then back into journalism.
Yeah, I mean, what a detour. So, could you sort of, who was the best person you worked for?
Definitely James Brokenshire. He was a great guy. Sadly, no longer with us. He died of cancer a few years ago, but just a lovely human being, and taught me a lot as well. And actually, still today, he just had great integrity. And very few politicians, I think, have the same kind of doing the right thing aspect as he did. He kind of weirdly wasn't that ambitious, yet nonetheless made it to the cabinet, or didn't come across overly ambitious anyway. But he just became a really good friend. I got to know his family. I'm actually having lunch with his wife on Saturday.
Nice.
We maintain the contacts, and I was delighted when his daughter just graduated from university the other day. So we keep in touch, and actually I wrote a book about my whole time as a special advisor called The Secret Life of Special Advisors, and it was quite funny. A friend of mine got back to me, and I was worried about a passage in it that was a bit critical of James. I sent it to a friend of mine, and my friend who'd read the whole book said, look, James comes out of the book better than God comes out of the Bible. So that was that.
Nice. So that's really good. And being a special advisor, what does that actually mean? And does it mean you have some sway in what happens in Parliament? Tell us more.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting job, actually. And what happens is that if you're a cabinet secretary, you've got literally thousands of civil servants who are supposed to be impartial. Most of them are, and they do the job of government. Here's the manifesto. This is what they want to do. Here's the policy. Off they go and implement that. But you have, if you're a cabinet secretary, you have usually 2, sometimes more. Prime Minister's quite a few, because a lot of the staff of Downing Street are made up of special advisors. There's about 120 in total. And in James's case, he had 2. He had 1 policy, 1 media. I was the media guy, and it's really to do politics rather than the policy of the department. Although the policy advisor advises on policy. It's interesting, actually. The best way I ever heard it described was I spoke to someone at the Ministry of Defence who's a special advisor, and she said, "My job is politics, not tanks."
Okay.
We have a lot of people who know about tanks.
Yes.
I know about politics, and it's saying, is this media strategy going to work?
Yeah.
Are you going to land your political goals? Talking to the backbenchers, for example, trying to get things through.
Yeah.
Thinking about how you come across in the media, what interviews you should do. The policy advisors thinking, what is conservative policy rather than government policy per se? How do those kind of interact? So that's a short explanation, but there's a heck of a lot more in my book.
Yeah, read the book, guys. I like that. Always plug away.
And another one coming out in a few weeks.
Oh, well, there you go. What's it called?
So it's called Political Animals,
Okay.
and my other great passion in life is animals and pets.
Yeah.
So I have a cat, but big into sort of all animals, and I thought, there were so many people. I've been on Downing Street, reporting on Downing Street. I've been working in and out of Downing Street quite a few times as a special advisor. I was in sort of 2 or 3 times a week. And you had, I always took photos of Larry, and they were always far more popular than anything else I was posting. And I just thought, there's something here.
Yes.
And then I thought, maybe there's a book in this. So I talked to my publisher, and the book is out on the 16th of September. So
Amazing.
it's called Political Animals. So yeah,
I love that. And what does that actually? What are you telling? Are they? Do they have political sway? do they tell the people what they want?
Well, I've interviewed 4 prime ministers about it. David Cameron gave me a photograph. Rishi Sunak's in there. Boris Johnson, Keir Starmer. Also Sue Gray, her first interview after leaving Downing Street. After I was about the cats of the Cabinet Office and how they were acquired. But
that's so funny.
it's an interesting idea. I think it's a bit different, but it brings together my 2 great passions. And so far, people seem to want copies of it. They've asked me for them and so on. So, and it's on Amazon as well.
Okay, amazing.
It's Gavin Williamson's trench.
Yes, I interviewed Gavin Williamson. Yes, well remembered. Yeah,
I love that.
Cronus is still alive, actually. So, Cronus is a girl, actually.
Oh,
the
wow.
tarantula. Yeah, people often think of tarantulas as male, but if they live beyond 5 years, they're probably female. So, but he loves spiders. He was just he was really, really enthusiastic about Cronus and was keen that Cronus got a proper showing. So Cronus is in there. It's not just dogs and cats. There are horses. There's a panda. There's a panda.
Who has a panda?
Well, panda diplomacy is a big thing as well. Between the Chinese and the Americans, especially. Yes. That's a whole part of it. There's a psychological bit. There's polling in there about people's attitudes to rescue animals. The whole thing is covered.
Oh wow! Well, I do like that. This is super cool. And then, why are you Conservative? Actually, I'm curious.
So I'm not sure I am anymore.
Still.
So I think my problem is that I was a Mayite and a Brookenshireite, if such a thing existed, and I'm not sure really since then. I mean, I worked for 6 months under Boris Johnson before Dominic Cummings sacked me, but badge of honour.
I mean, that's quite a claim.
Do you know what? I saw him at a wedding just over a year ago, and we got on fine. I had a good old chat about Otto von Bismarck, as you do, and it was, I think the way the Conservative Party is now, it has a massive hill to climb. I think things are in serious trouble, and it's not, I suppose, as if I'm abandoning the Conservatives, but I left the party about 2 or 3 years ago, really for work, because I'm a presenter now on Talk. What I didn't want was someone asking me, "Are you a member of the political party? Why are you saying this?" Some of the ideas of reform I think are quite interesting. I don't think the Labour government has been a success, but I also think there are little bits of it, and there are individual people in there. I can see their views. So I think because I now, when you're a special advisor, you're often in the tunnel. You're very much, this is the way things go, and it's almost a bunker mentality. Whereas now I'm seeing little bits of policies. I even praised the Lib Dems a few weeks ago, because I know. Listen,
that's varied.
Even a stop clock tells the right time twice a day. They had a policy, not very liberal actually. They had a policy of fining people up to £1,000 for playing music out of their phone on public transport. So obviously, I think that's a very good idea. Although I'd advocate that it be £100,000 or maybe £1 million, just your life savings.
Buy headphones.
Buy headphones. If you can afford 200, if you can afford 200, 300, £400 for a phone, you can afford $599 for a pair of headphones.
It's so true.
With that, you say obviously you don't want to be partisan as a journalist, but I feel like we've got GB News, which is basically Talk TV.
Talk is fairly partisan. I think we're on the right. I often say that I'm probably one of the most, if not the most, left-wing presenter on Talk, but I would see myself still maybe as a kind of One Nation-y conservative kind type of person. I don't really know what my personal politics is, as I've just said, but certainly Talk has a view. I don't think it's as reforming as GB News, although a lot of our viewers and listeners do love reform and do feel that Nigel Farage has something to say and are quite annoyed, I think, that Kemi Badenoch doesn't have more to say. But certainly we have all views, really.
But do you think that the Conservatives need a channel? Like, could Talk be Conservative?
Maybe. I mean,
Blue.
I think if Kemi came on a bit more, maybe that'll be nice. She's always welcome on our channel. Certainly, I think that the Conservatives have had really good media coverage for a long time. They're still adjusting, I think, to opposition, but there's some really good opposition characters like Robert Jenrick, of course. And I actually think Chris Philp is pretty good as well. He's very good at kind of hammering home and pointing out things that are, and I think at PMQs he did really well as well. And in a kind of more gentlemanly kind of almost sort of gentle way, Mel Stride as well does make some
he's
points.
the underdog. I really got to like him recently when he was doing PMQs.
Spending review.
Yes, the spending review. Yeah, I was like, okay, yeah, I like it.
And actually, he's such a gentleman as well. I mean, after every interview, he always sends messages, "Thank you very much."
Yeah.
Even if you've been kind of hammering him and saying, you know, "Why are you lying to me now?" You know, he sends you a nice message afterwards saying, "Thanks very much. That was a lovely interview." And you know, it's just a nice thing.
Yeah, that's great. And okay, so you've just mentioned that sort of reform is kind of, you know, getting a lot of traction, and a lot of people, maybe conservatives or whatever, are kind of leaning towards them. What can conservatives do to change that? Is there anything they can do, or is it just everyone's going to jump ship? Like, what? Are we
I don't
doomed?
I don't think it's entirely inevitable. I think a lot of people will go to reform. I mean, reform are essentially saying the old politics is gone. What I hear a lot from our viewers and listeners is this kind of idea of a uni party, this idea that the Conservatives, the Lib Dems, and Labour are all the same and all doing the same things. Look, there's definitely a sense of trying to ameliorate some of the problems of the last 14 years. You know, dealing with the fact that it's only been a year since the last election. But certainly we're in a situation where I think the Conservatives can do better. I think they will do better than 16% in the next election. But at the same time, they need to be authentic and they need to offer a true alternative. And I think this idea of let's have a big think and can then come up with our policies, they need to get a move on.
Yes, I kind of feel that. I feel a lot of people are sort of saying that as well right now because building those foundations, well, they need to be built now.
There are things that only the Conservatives are saying, right? So on welfare, for example, every other party, including Reform, is saying let's spend more.
Yes.
The Conservatives are the only party that's saying let's actually spend within our means. So do you think that kind of messaging is what people want to hear, but maybe
I think so.
punchier?
Yeah, I think punchier is a good idea. And certainly, I think people are taxed to such a huge degree. The biggest proportion of the highest taxation as a proportion of what the country makes since the Second World War. And I think people want value for money for that. It's interesting, if you look at one of the most popular taxes, yes, such a thing exists, in the last 20 years, it was when Tony Blair said we're going to put a penny on national insurance to pay for the NHS. If the Conservatives came up with something like that again and said, look, we don't want taxes to rise, but if they have to, here's why, and here's the tangible benefit you're going to get at the end of it. The problem for Labour is that one of the first things they did was give a 22% pay rise to the junior doctors, and then they said, sorry, old people who want, who want a winter fuel allowance, we don't have any money anymore. Well, you know, how does that work?
Yeah. Okay, so if you were to be a special advisor for, you know, Keir or Rachel Reeves, what would your top tip, or what would you say to them? Actually, you need to do this right now to turn your government around.
Goodness me. Well, again, I think...
silver bullet.
Yes, if I could come up with that, I'd be a rich man, certainly. I think Keir Starmer needs to work out what he believes, and I think he needs to be much more political. I think that he's a lawyer. If you look at... I mean, it's not the world's most interesting news story, but it's something that I think tells you everything you need to know about this Labour government in the last year, is the Chagos Islands, right? So that was a completely avoidable political story, that because international lawyers said, you must do this, Keir Starmer thought, oh, I must do this. There's a risk of prosecution. The risk of prosecution probably wasn't high. Maybe the Americans were involved behind the scenes, but essentially he did something he didn't need to do. And what is the net, in politics you've always got to say, what's the net result? What will people feel? Because most people don't know all the details. They might see, you know, Prime Minister's Questions is the day that we're recording this, for example. People might see 30 seconds on the news later on tonight. They're probably not going to watch the whole thing. Politics is a feeling. It's emotional. So what's the feeling that's left at the end of Keir Starmer, at the end of a speech, at the end of a soundbite, an interview? And often there's not very much. And I think that if people are crying out for leadership at the moment.
100%.
Lead them, even if they disagree with the leadership. I think people respect the leader more when they say, this is the direction, this is the right thing, you've got to trust me, we're going here, and being strong, and he's not a strong leader. I just had a conversation with one of my American friends who's visiting, and then we were talking about Trump. He's not a fan of Trump, but he was like, but I get why people like him, because he's transparent, you know, mostly, and he says what he's going to do. So whether you believe in what he's doing or not, at least you know what you're going to get. And I think that is quite the true thing that we are lacking here in the UK.
With Keir Starmer, obviously you were kind of stuck in the middle of a media storm recently about him and the single mother with the fake kitchen.
It wasn't a fake kitchen.
But do you think it was weird that it was up to you to actually set the record straight and the PM's comms team didn't do it? Does that just show how poor their comms are at the moment?
Well, I'll give you a Mod Cons exclusive on this. So first of all, there was... I wrote an article actually for the Times about this, about how this Twitter storm got completely out of control. It was in a woman's kitchen. She is someone who has 3 children. She is a real person. She's not an actress. But someone suggested, I went up to Staffordshire, and someone suggested that this woman was an actress and this wasn't real. It absolutely was real. And I found myself, as you correctly say, just trying to bat back some of, I mean, Twitter, it's a Sisyphean task. You're never going to answer every tweet. And I didn't try to. But actually, Andrew Neil, the broadcaster, then said, hold on a second, here's my question, here's my question, here's my question. I then replied to it, and it kind of went away a few days after that. But certainly, I mean, I had a bit of, here's your exclusive, I had a bit of a joke with one of the senior people in Downing Street and said, you know, I'm starting as the head of your rapid rebuttal unit. On Monday, I bring 3.5 years experience to the role of special advisor, which that person found very funny. But certainly, there does need to be a bit more pushback, I think. There can be sometimes when I've been in situations where, you know, things have been wrong or contributors have said things incorrectly. I get a message from someone in Downing Street saying, you know, I was on Times Radio recently, I was presenting a programme filling in for someone, and I got a message from Downing Street saying, actually, this is incorrect, can you say this? Which I said on air, I've got a message from Downing Street, and you know, I was totally transparent about that. But certainly the communications operation, some of it's good, a lot of it isn't. But also, as one advisor to Philip Hammond actually said to me one time, when Philip Hammond had said something he shouldn't have, you can only advise so far.
That's true. I always want to have like a little sort of a geeky person that comes up on the screen with a fact check. So when people are like throwing out their numbers, this is abysmal, $1 billion here and 10 million there, fact check. Actually,
yes. Well, do you know what? A friend of mine did a whole big study on BBC Verify, Phil Fact, the Channel 4 one, I can't remember what it's called, the whole thing, and he did a really, really interesting study on all of this and whether it actually affects politics in any way. The answer is not really. See if you're reading the paper.
It's true. But I do think people just listen to sound bites and think that's fact, and that's quite scary.
Well, I think we're going to have a sort of almost AI kind of red button thing on our screens soon, I would imagine, where with that sort of will verify things in real time. I think that's the obvious next kind of solution to all of this.
That's quite cool.
But also, when sometimes people hear the truth and don't want to hear it, you know, like I was putting out the truth. This is a genuine woman with 3 kids. You know, I was there. And I mean, at the end of it, someone, I remember one of the replies just said, "Well, you would say that, wouldn't you?" What benefit is it for me? You know?
Exactly.
Now, you said that you were sacked by Dominic Cummings. Is it true that he's a mad genius?
He's definitely a mad genius. He's, well, I would say, strategic genius, eccentric genius, definitely. But no, I actually have a lot of time for him. He had every right to sack me if he wanted to. That's fine. That's the thing with being a special advisor. You're a political mayfly. I mean, I lasted 3.5 years. Most people get a couple of years out of it. It's an exhausting job. But no, the time had come for me to go. To be honest, I was slightly surprised to survive into the Johnson administration. I was very much a creature of the May administration. But certainly, no, I have a lot of time and respect for Dominic. Clearly, very controversial character for lots of reasons. But the key thing is he does like cats. So, it's not all bad.
You can't be that bad if you like cats. Do you think he'll come back? Do you think they'll will him back into
maybe
some political?
Certainly he will have. He always has ideas. He always has a plan. I think if Kemi Baddock's not the character to do it because she's too strong a character. But I can see someone, if Robert Jenrick became the leader of the Conservatives, I can see him going, hold on a second here. We have someone here who can bring us back to power. But a lot of bridges have been burnt. Also, I don't think Dominic Cummings is tribal in the way that most Conservatives are. So, and actually most people involved in politics are. I think he has a very clear idea of what his view of things are rather than what anything else is.
The problem with Dominic Cummings, though, is that he's just very easy to throw you under the bus. Like the way he took down Boris was quite savage. And if I was a leader, I wouldn't want someone like that in my cabinet. Like you said, it's very risky. And
very risky. But the reward could be you get to be Prime Minister.
It comes and goes, right? But I mean, we've got next year, we're going to keep it London because you live in London. So do we. Well, we've got Sadiq Khan, right? We've got local elections coming up next year, and we've got Sadiq still in power as well. What do you think's going? Like, do you think that Sadiq is? I don't understand how he keeps winning these elections. First of all,
first of all, Sir Sadiq to you.
I beg to refrain.
He is a knight of the realm. I think I'd be very surprised if he continues for another term, although I think Labour will win. I think, London is it's maybe not necessarily a Labour city, but it's a Remain city.
Yes.
And I think the legacy of Brexit means the Conservatives will find it very, very hard to win.
Yeah. I think they need like a personality. Like it has to be a person.
And someone who's properly, I know that Tom Skinner from The Apprentice was thinking of running, and good luck to him if he does. I have a lot of time for anybody who stands for political office, but I think it would need to be someone really with a lot of integrity and a lot of fame actually as well to properly knock things off. And actually, I wonder if someone who would be on the left of the Conservatives, maybe like Penny Mordaunt or someone like that, could actually make some inroads. I felt a bit sorry for Sean Bailey. Actually, he did very, very well. But I think if the Conservatives had thought that they had as good a chance as they did in that election, they probably would have run someone who was more high profile.
And so we have local elections next year, and everyone's talking about who are we going to vote for? Is it going to be a landslide to reform? Are they going to have people in every seat? Are they going to be like protests, not voting? What's going to happen? What's your feel so far? Because obviously you are out there.
Well, I agree with you in regard to, I don't think London will ever be a reform city per se, but I do think they will get some votes, and they will get some councillors certainly. But when you get outside London and when you get into the towns and some of the cities elsewhere, well, there's a real political earthquake happening in this country at the moment. I think reform will do very well. I think Labour are going to obviously they didn't do hugely badly in the last set because there weren't that many Labour councils and Labour councillors up for election. But I think there's going to be. I think there's a big point of risk after the next council election for Keir Starmer, because I think people will see the way the tide is turning. People don't quite believe the polls at the moment, but I speak to people all the time. I get people ringing into my program. I get people texting and tweeting and sending voice notes, and actually they're not representative of Britain as a whole. They're just representative of talk viewers and listeners, and that's a different thing. And David Cameron famously said Twitter is not Britain and so on. But there's a lot of frustration out there with the Labour Party. There's a lot of frustration with politics as it was and as it is. And I think there's a lot of possibility in people's minds anyway about what it might be. And also the sense, similar actually in sentiment to the last general election, where people said, well, we'll just vote for something different because it's different.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I guess a lot of it will depend on whether Corbyn and Zara Sultana run people in that local election, because that would completely change.
Yes.
Although they've somehow managed to have a split in a party with two people,
I know.
Which is quite impressive.
It was impressive. Day one. I'm not sure.
But those in the Greens would be more London, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So you mentor a teenager?
Yes,
just
right.
one, or are
just
you
one,
open to offer in the market?
he's actually now not a teenager anymore. He's just turned 20, but no, since he was 13 years old. I can't say too much, obviously, because it's confidential. But no, since he was 13 years old, very, very difficult situation. And actually, we had this very weird situation where I was in this very strange week in politics, where James Brokenshire had very sadly resigned because he'd been diagnosed with cancer. His successor, Karen Bradley, had asked me to stay on in the role at the Northern Ireland office. But Amber Rudd, who was then the Home Secretary, had asked me to move to the Home Office. And there was just all these moving parts. Yeah. Sue Gray was involved. She was asking me to stay at the Northern Ireland office. There were all these sort of moving parts. Number 10 was quite annoyed because they didn't want me to move to the Home Office because they wanted me to stay at demand. Well, it was just a blizzard of phone calls. Yeah. And I remember being on the phone to James saying, what am I going to do? And this is all really stressful and da-da-da-da. And I was walking to my very first time that the young man in the care system and I were going to go out somewhere and do a fun thing, and it's a really good scheme. It's called Independent Visitors. It's run by Action for Children. It's a great charity, and they always need men as well. They're sort of enough women, although they're always looking for more, but male role models for kids who've had a really tough time in their life. And I've been hanging out with this young man for the last sort of 7 years or so, just sort of about once a month, just for an afternoon. But anyway, I was on this complicated phone call thinking, and then I came to the door, knocked the door, and suddenly he came out, 13 years old, and started just into this monologue for 20 minutes about Pokemon. And I just thought, I can literally talk to the Home Secretary on the phone and another Secretary of State on the phone. But how on earth am I going to relate to a 13-year-old talking about Pokemon? This is not my neighbourhood. He talks about other things now. He's sort of slightly grown out of Pokemon. But,
did you mentor him into talking about
that? Well, moved out of Pokemon. Yeah, he did. He said he got to catch them all, and then he did.
Yeah.
But he's now 20 years old. He's doing well. He actually wants to join the armed services and serve our country, which is a really, really good thing. He's in the process of hopefully doing that at the moment, but I'm really proud of him and all he has achieved after a horrendous start in life. But if anybody is thinking about it, especially men, but women as well, it's not a huge commitment. There's a bit of vetting and training and so on. But Action for Children is a brilliant charity, and the scheme's called Independent Visitors.
Amazing. And just because I was going to say, did you have any mentors when you were sort of?
Oh yeah.
In growing
Loads.
up, growing up. So
yeah. Well.
And who are your? I guess I mean I don't know how many you had, but your top 1 or 3, and what did they instill in you, or what nugget of advice in one little thing did they give you that you can share with us?
I'll do maybe 1 in journalism, 1 in politics.
Yes.
So in journalism, I've had loads of mentors and loads of people who've been very, very kind to me at various times, and some quite even people like Jeremy Paxman have been really nice to me over the years and give me a lot of advice, and been very good at sort of signing books for auctions and things like that, which is a really, really nice guy. But actually, the number 1 mentor is a woman I'm sure most people with this podcast probably haven't heard of, but a journalist in Northern Ireland called Yvette Shapiro, who from day 1 has been my number 1 champion and given me loads of advice, sometimes quite sort of close to the bone, but nonetheless, always with my best interest at heart. And she was a very successful journalist in Northern Ireland, and she just said, in journalism you can teach anything. You can teach writing, you can teach how to shoot something, you can teach how to edit a story, but you cannot teach curiosity. And unless you have that at the heart of every single thing you do, you're not going to succeed. But no, she's given me loads of tips and tricks over the years. Journalistically, back to James Brokenshire, I would say, and even though he is not even with us anymore, very sadly, as I say, died a few years ago, his life lessons, his inspiration, and his integrity, and not that I always come up to the mark that he had, but certainly those lessons are there every single day.
Oh, that's really good, and it's good to have that kind of thing to aspire to be, if you will. Okay, so what's next for you? We know you've got a book coming out.
Yeah. So the book is the big one. I'm actually, as we sit here, I've just sent it back to the publisher for a second time with all the edits and everything. It's all very exciting. I get it back in a few days' time for proofing. I'm going to sign off the cover very soon. It's going to be able to you're going to be able to buy it, and in a shameless marketing tactic, I've actually got a little stamp with my I'll sign them, but a little stamp with my cat's paw on it. So Jack the cat will sign them. So there's a few people who want that as well, which is fine. But no, that's the next big thing.
Jack's a rescue cat, right?
He is a rescue cat. Adopt, don't shop. Adopt, don't shop.
I love that.
I don't drink either. It's lonely up here on the Moral High Ground, I can tell you. But no, so the book is out on the 16th of September. That's the next big thing. The presenting sort of Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday on Talk will continue. I hope for some time to come. And also the next thing as well is I'm going to be starting a job. I don't know if it's slightly under wraps, but I'll tell you anyway. At City University, I'm going to be teaching some journalism.
Amazing.
I'm going to be teaching a course there. It's just a short course,
but
I'm going to be teaching that in the next academic year.
That's
part-time thing. Yeah.
Love that.
So cool.
Always,
cool.
Helping the next generation. That's so important.
Talking about the next generation, just one more thing. How can we get younger people involved in politics, or passionate about it, or curious? Curiosity.
Well, meet them where they are. I think there's no point setting up a meeting where people sit there and talk about their ideas. Have a barbecue, go to have something in a pub, have something in an event where a politician speaks for like 5 minutes and everything else is social. That's something to sort of say, if the interest is there. There are a lot of people as well who are worried that it'll be a huge thing in their life, and it doesn't have to be. It can be a little thing. It can be doing something every 6 weeks or once a month. It can even just be following someone on TikTok or whatever, and actually finding a way. And what you're doing with Mod Cons, I think, is really good as well. To actually talk about it in a reasonable conversational way, and to say that it's not all about look, crusty old men are the backbone of the Conservative Party.
There's
nothing wrong with crusty old men, and I'm becoming one very rapidly. But the fact that, you know, with not to be patronising, I hope, but the fact that you're two young women who are, you know, doing this podcast is fantastic. And if that's a way of reaching people and saying, you know, conservatism, politics is interesting, even if people listen to things I'm saying and think, you know, you're talking nonsense. I always say to people in my shows on Talk, I always say, you know, if you think I'm talking nonsense, give me a ring and tell me why. Let's have a discussion. I'd much rather have a discussion than not. And I think any form of discussion you can have, whether it's through social media, whether it's through listening or interacting with this, whether it's a social event or whatever. But I mean, there is a place too for the geeks. There's a place for the, you know, there was one guy, I just remember, we were at a party conference, and he came up and he wanted a selfie with one of my ministers, which was fine, perfectly nice. And he was 16, and his mum had brought him to Conservative Party conference, and I thought, it was so lovely. It was so lovely. But his mum came too, and I just thought that was just a nice thing. You know, I was a 15-year-old who read John Major's autobiography. You know, dull, but hopefully less dull now. The book was good though.
That's so funny. That's good. Well, I mean, that's been amazing. Thank you so much. Peter, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure, and you're very humble, I think, but you do some amazing things. So please keep that up, because we need more of that in the world.
Very kind.
Vote Conservative.
And vote Conservative. Yeah, but thank you so much. Yeah, you've got 3 years. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Don't forget, Monday midday, ModCons. See you soon.